Here are your 2018 Republican gubernatorial candidates. Laura Ellsworth has been a litigator for 33 years, 12 of them as a partner in charge of the Pittsburgh office of the international firm Jones Day. Ellsworth is currently working on the pilot for VetLex, a national program to provide free legal services for veterans, a global initiative to combat human trafficking, and an international telemedicine project to link hospitals around the world. Ellsworth has been married for nearly 25 years and has one son, 20 years old. Paul Mango is a West Point graduate who became an Army Ranger paratrooper and served in the 82nd Airborne Division. After the military, Mango returned to school to earn a master's degree in business from Harvard and joined a business leadership and advisory firm. Mango has been married for 35 years and has 5 daughters. Senator Scott Wagner was born in York Township, growing up on a farm. After a year of college, Wagner started his own business. He's worked with businesses in diverse sectors of the economy and is the president and owner of York-based Penn Waste Incorporated and KBS Trucking in Thomasville, Pennsylvania. Wagner won his Senate seat in a write-in campaign in 2014. He is not seeking re-election to the state Senate. All 3 of these proudly Pennsylvanian candidates want to be your next governor. Hello and welcome to the CBS21 PennLive Republican Gubernatorial debate, live here from the Rose Lerman Arts Center in Harrisburg. And first I want to have our audience welcome these candidates. Okay, just to let you know at home that we have asked the audience to hold off on their applause and the shouting and everything during the debate, so I hope you got it out of your systems, everybody. I'm Rob Hanrahan, anchor for CBS 21 News and Face the State, our Sunday political program. I'm joined by PennLive Patriot News opinion editor John Misick, PennLive Patriot News Capitol Bureau Chief Jan Murphy here, and of course CBS 21 News anchor Jasmine Brooks, who will be handling our social media questions. And right now, John Misick will introduce us to the rules of the debate.
Okay, very quickly, candidates, there will be no opening statements for this evening's proceedings, but we will allow you a 90-second closing statement. Each candidate will be allowed 1-minute responses for each question with an optional 30-second rebuttal. There'll be no candidate-to-candidate questions, nor will there be any audience questions tonight.
All right, candidates, you ready? Let's get started. We begin with Jan Murphy.
All right. Well, in Washington this week, we've watched an extraordinary discussion about gun control, with President Donald Trump coming out in favor of expanded background checks and raising the minimum purchasing age for rifles and long guns from 18 to 21. What specific state-level measures, including expanded background checks, a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, and gun violence restraining orders, do you support or oppose, and why? Starting with Senator Wagner.
Jan, currently we have background checks in Pennsylvania, and as governor, I would want to know whether every I is being dotted and every T is being crossed. We saw 2 weeks ago that the FBI received tips in Florida. They didn't follow up on the tips. There's many flaws in the system, but I want to know, are the current regulations and the checks that are in place being done as according to protocol? We currently have over 153,000 regulations in Pennsylvania. We have 204 regulations on ladders. But I would want to know, is every application being scrutinized to the fullest to make sure that the person that is applying for the purchase or transfer of a weapon is being completed correctly, and every I is being dotted and every T is being crossed?
All right, Ms. Ellsworth.
I watched Parkland through a mother's eyes, as did many people. And I cannot imagine my child going to school on Valentine's Day and never coming home. And so when I ask what would I do to correct that, the first thing I would do, my objective would be to protect our children now. Not 6 weeks from now, not 6 months from now. And so the things I would do to do that are the things we do to protect our adults. So think about where you go. You go to an office building with a swipe card. You go to a courthouse or a federal building or a football game and you walk through a metal detector. You go to a hotel to go up, you use a swipe card. I would put swipe cards and metal detectors in every school. And we will have a debate about guns in this country, but guns involve the Second Amendment. They actually involve two Second Amendments. We have a federal and a state. That is where the government is most restricted, as in any constitutional issue. I would take care of our children now, and I would not hold them hostage to that discussion. I would make them as safe as we make adults. I would have central reporting. I would prioritize school reporting, and I would report it to the schools.
Thank you. Mr. Mango.
You know, Jan, what happened in Florida was a tragedy. Dawn and I do have 5 daughters. One of them is age 14. She's a freshman in high school, about the age of many of those children who were murdered in Florida. But I don't think we should automatically go to and equate the monster in Florida with those who are trying to exercise their Second Amendment rights here in Pennsylvania, peacefully. So I was actually in charge of the lives of many young men and women when I was an officer in the 82nd Airborne Division. And leaders anticipate the threats that face those in their charge, and they address those threats before they become realities. There are 4 things I would do as governor of Pennsylvania. 1, I would enhance the resources necessary to screen for and diagnose mental illness. 2, if diagnosed with mental illness, we would preclude that individual from getting his hands on firearms. 3, yes, every school district needs a security plan, but I wouldn't do a one-size-fits-all security plan. I would tailor the security plans to the threats and needs of each of those school districts. And 4, I'd make sure our law enforcement folks have the resources necessary to integrate the data to detect these types of threats.
Thank you. All right. Any rebuttal time? Yep, rebuttal time, Senator Wagner.
You asked me specifically about background checks. I made a statement earlier this week. We do need to secure our schools. And I believe that we need an armed, highly trained security officer in every school. Mental health is a huge issue. Mental health issues right now in York, Pennsylvania, if you try to get into a local healthcare system, it takes 2 months. The shooter in Florida called someone back in November and said his mother had passed away and he was in trouble. Yeah, secure the schools, security officers.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Ellsworth, any rebuttal?
I guess one other thing that I would do to respond to private sector is we have platforms that sell us toasters. They know who we are and that we're buying a toaster. They send us ads for toasters. If they can use those platforms for profit, they can use them to protect our children. We should invite them to do so.
Okay. And Mr. Mango?
We've had about 70 school shootings since Senator Wagner's been in office for the last 4 years. He saw that. He said very little, and he did absolutely nothing. The Harrisburg insiders are putting our children and their security at risk. They're nothing other than dangerous, ineffective, liberal insiders. He was there 4 years. He talks about everything he would do. He did nothing.
I want to remind the audience that we have a timing light down here in the front to time these answers. We are not trying to cut you off as candidates. The candidates can see it, and so can the audience. Next question from John Meiser.
Okay. Ms. Ellsworth, this one to you. In a state Senate hearing this week, Senator Gene Dahl of Lycoming County compared those struggling with opioid addiction to those who are contending with diabetes or high blood pressure. That some among them had a medical condition and or sometimes not at fault for their addictions. You, 1, believe that to be the case, and 2, apart from the specific steps the state has already taken to combat opiate addiction, I wonder what you would do as governor.
So I bring a special eye to this because my husband was a drug prosecutor for 30 years and did the first China White cases 25 years ago. I believe that opiate addiction is a disease. As governor, I would do a couple of things. Number 1, I would reinstate the secretary who focused on that issues in the prior administration that Governor Wolf removed. The second thing I would do is call a special session of the legislature to address the complex problem of opiates. On the interdiction side, we have about 4,200 state troopers. Of those 4,200, do you know how many are trained narcotics agents? About 95. So I would train up our narcotics agents. I would have them work more closely with the narcotics agents in the AG's office and with the feds. I would shut down the Medicaid centers that are pill mills. I would take their civil licenses. And on the treatment side, I would not have a zombie zone where we give people needles and Narcan and needles and Narcan. We should not do that. We should have 2 strikes and you're in. 2 times of Narcan, you go to inpatient treatment where we get you off the drugs.
Great, thank you. Mr. Mango.
This is the worst public health crisis in the history of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, 5,000 of our fellow citizens dying a year. The first thing I would do is ensure that the leadership, focus, resources, and attention commensurate with that level of destruction is given to this issue. But this is a very complex and problem that requires a comprehensive solution. The governor and others have talked about the clinical aspects of it, overprescription. I think there are diseases of despair and social issues that are contributing to this as well, that are very serious. And I also believe there are criminal issues. And the governor's trying to eliminate the minimum mandatory sentences for drug dealers while he's fighting the drug overdose epidemic. That is absolutely incoherent to me. Lastly, this problem can't be solved in Harrisburg. I'll tell you where it can be solved: in our local communities. They understand the nature of this issue. It is not one epidemic, it's 18 to 20 epidemics. I would organize our local communities, I would resource them, and have them address this issue locally.
Thank you. Senator Wagner.
I agree with Mr. Mango. In 2014, 4 months after I joined the Senate, I, along with the Assistant District Attorney, the District Attorney's Office, and the coroner, formed the York County Heroin Task Force. What the York County Heroin Task Force has accomplished since 2014 is short of breathtaking. We've had well over 100 town hall meetings. We're educating. And this is a very complex issue. But the prescribing of opioids and overprescribing continues every day. Last year in Pennsylvania, we collected, through drop boxes in Pennsylvania, almost 3 million pounds of unused drugs. And I'll take a guess and say it's probably 10 to 15% of the problem. To think about what's going on. And I totally agree that this is the local solutions, and we have done that. There are heroin task force around the state in local communities. You know, York County has gotten a lot of recognition on what they've done. But again, you know, Philadelphia, you know, the drug-free zones.
Thank you, Senator.
Not working.
Ms. Ellsworth, any follow-up?
I would also say this. I think that we need solutions that are tailored to the nature of the problem. And it is a problem of disease and despair. And when we have economic breakdown in our communities and we don't have jobs and economic promise and education for our students, they are hopeless and they turn to drugs. We need to bring jobs and economic rebirth to Pennsylvania, and that will help solve this problem.
Mr. Mango.
And listen, I appreciate all that Senator Wagner's doing, but he also supports legislation called the Clean Slate Bill, which would preclude employers, like in pharmacies and hospitals, from understanding whether or not they were hiring a convicted felon drug dealer. That would put our children's safety and security at risk. It's incoherent. We cannot advance the Clean Slate Bill for convicted felon drug dealers and fight the drug overdose epidemic at the same time.
Mr. Mango, thank you. And now we are going to move on to another aspect of our debate, and that is, of course, social media. We've been taking your questions online for about a week and a half, 2 weeks now, and CBS21's Jasmine Brooks has been doing the work on that.
That's right. We got a lot of questions, but we're going to begin with someone named Rhonda Ziegler. And tonight she asks, what is your plan to decrease bullying in our public school systems and hold our public schools accountable to properly discipline perpetrators of bullying, regardless of their age? And we begin with Mr. Mango.
Yeah. First of all, let me tell you, I've visited about 30 separate schools across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the last 15 months. And particularly when I get to our inner city schools, and I talk to students who want to leave, students who have left for alternatives. And I say, why do you want to leave? Why have you left? The number one reason is I do not feel safe here in this environment. We cannot have a successful K through 12 education system if our kids do not feel safe. We absolutely need to create an environment in which there is zero tolerance for violence. We need to role model that behavior. We need to train the administrators and teachers to identify and eradicate that behavior. We will never have a successful K through 12 education system if our kids do not feel safe.
Senator Wagner.
Listen, the bullying aspect is a very big problem. It's going on in all the schools throughout Pennsylvania. School boards are afraid to do something because if they discipline a child, bring the parents in, the first thing the parents say is, well, we're going to sue your school district. Well, you know what? Let them sue the school district. But you also need a governor who's got some backbone, who works with the Department of Education to make sure that this stuff, is dealt with. It is a problem. And if you look at the shooters involved in a lot of the shootings at public schools, they had history of being bullied. So we absolutely need to deal with this, but it's going to take a governor who's willing to stand up. The school boards, again, we hear it repeatedly, they're afraid to do something because they're going to get sued. It's time that the school boards start standing up and deal with this issue. It's a very large issue.
And Ms. Ellsworth.
So I would like to see us have an amnesty bill for the reporting and discipline of bullying in the schools. I do agree that people are afraid to address bullying in the schools, and we need to allow people to deal with it in real time without fear of being sued for it. I also think that we need to empower our teachers to remove bullies from the classroom, and I also think that we need to involve our students in anti-bullying activity. All of the studies show that involving students and doing peer-to-peer anti-bullying are the most effective tools to reduce bullying in the schools, and I think those should be done in every school in Pennsylvania, and I think we should report on it and keep track of it and make sure that it's done.
And Mr. Mango, you can rebut.
This issue will never be addressed under Governor Wolf. I'll tell you what, I've spoken to several scores of teachers out there. They're just as frustrated as anyone else with their inability to react and respond to this challenge. And the reason Governor Wolf will never let them do it is because he's in the pockets of the teachers' unions, and he would rather have his campaign funded by them than protect our children in our schools. That's why we need a new governor. I will address this in January 2019.
Senator Wagner, would you like to respond?
Listen, it's a very, very complex issue, and as you go around and talk to school administrators, I've been doing this for 4 years, and Mr. Mango is correct. The PSEA owns Governor Wolf, and nothing's going to happen. And PSEA, quite frankly, is part of the problem. It's teachers are afraid to do things, and they do not get the representation from the district like they should because the district is fighting with the PSEA. It's a very complex issue.
Ms. Ellsworth, would you like to respond?
I think there is a difference between teachers and the teachers union. I agree that the teachers union is in many ways getting in the way of improving the education of our children. But I have never known a teacher who did not want to step up and do the right thing to prevent bullying and to be empowered to prevent bullying. And our teachers are the most important people in our children's lives outside their family. And I think to suggest that any teacher would step away from a legitimate opportunity to prevent bullying does a disservice to our teachers.
Thank you.
So that question comes from social media on bullying. We thank you for your answers on that. I have a question now for the three of you. Each will be running in the shadow of the Trump administration at this point. It is an administration that has made some controversial decisions. How closely will you be aligned with the Trump administration, and do you think Republicans should be aligned with the Trump administration no matter what decisions are made on controversial issues including gun regulations and immigration? Senator Wagner.
Listen, I supported Donald Trump from day one because he represented change, and that's what I'm going to represent in Pennsylvania. Something happened in the last 2 weeks. People in Pennsylvania are now getting paychecks, whether they're weekly or biweekly. They're seeing increases of between 2 and 5% more in their paychecks. They feel safer. They have more pride. So I expect that President Trump will come to Pennsylvania and campaign for me. I am the endorsed candidate of the Republican Party. But at the end of the day, I went to Harrisburg for a reason, because I was fed up with all the regulations. I was fed up with how government operated. Donald Trump went to Washington for that exact same reason. When I tell you there's 153,000 regulations in Pennsylvania, 204 on ladders, it's ridiculous. And the federal government, 50 times more. Enough is enough.
Ms. Ellsworth. Ms. Ellsworth.
I think the governor's primary role is to represent the people of Pennsylvania as effectively as possible. Part of that involves representing Pennsylvania in Washington with the president in Washington. And I think there are a lot of people I have heard say that I don't necessarily like what the president says, but I love what he does. And I think if you look at some of the things that the president has done, I think the Gorsuch Supreme Court pick and the other judges as a lawyer, I think they were superb. I think the deregulation is important. I think what he's done for veterans, I do a lot of work with veterans across the country. He has done exceptional work for veterans and our military. The deregulation, the tax bill, I think is a good bill for businesses. So I think he has done a lot of good things. I think nobody can ever be quiet about matters of principle that are important to them. And one of the reasons I'm running is because I believe that we in this country can disagree without being disagreeable. We can respect opposing views, we can exchange opposing views, and we can find a greater truth by listening to each other and just get things done.
Mr. Mango.
I voted for Donald Trump twice. I supported him financially. We share very similar agendas. Pro-jobs, pro-growth. We both want to restore prosperity to our middle class. In fact, one of my campaign themes is it's time to bring our jobs and our children back home. He wants to make America great again. I want to restore the dream of America to the people of Pennsylvania. I would be honored to be side by side with the president campaigning against the liberal, progressive, socialist governor, Tom Wolf. And I'll tell you this, together, President Trump and I are going to defeat Tom Wolf, and we're going to be in charge of Pennsylvania in January of 2019.
Senator Wagner, response?
Listen, this is about Pennsylvania. This is about the people of Pennsylvania. My mission is to put more money in their paychecks, put more money in their bank accounts. You know, Mr. Mango spent many years at a very large consulting firm, and every time that consulting firm went into a company, thousands of jobs were lost. I have a 40-year history of creating thousands of jobs, and I'm proud to tell you that today, I employ over 600 people and will issue paychecks tomorrow morning, which is a great day.
Ms. Ellsworth.
You know, one of the things I've wondered why Governor Wolf doesn't speak up is I look at Russia, and I look at all of the talk that's come out of Russia recently, and I know that Russia's primary economic driver is liquid natural gas that they ship to Europe. We are standing here in Pennsylvania atop perhaps the largest store of natural gas on the planet. I think the case needs to be taken to Washington, that we get that out of the ground and we use that to fight the Russians rather than our young men and women.
Mr. Mango.
Senator Wagner obviously knows very little about my background, because what I did for 25 years was lead a team that built a $500 million global healthcare business. We did business in 35 countries. When we served our clients principally on growth and job creation and international expansion and competitiveness. So I'll go at any time with Senator Wagner on job creation. The business I created is 10 times the size of Penn Waste, just to let you know.
All right, thank you all. And now we go to Jan Murphy once again.
All right, well, all three of you have said that you favor school choice. And since Pennsylvania already has some public funded school choice options, cyber schools, charter schools, we have the 2 tax credit programs, the ITC, the alphabet soup, OSTC. What, if any, changes would you propose to those programs, and how would you pay for them? Senator Wagner.
Listen, charter schools are an option.
To begin with, Ms. Ellsworth.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Ellsworth.
So I believe that we should have choice because our children are different. Different children learn in different environments, and we should provide a multitude of environments so that children and their parents can find where they learn best. The ways I would do that are really twofold. Number one, I would expand the EITC and OSTC programs, in particular the OSTC program, because that's the one that focuses on children in failing school districts, that gets them in a better performing school. The reason I like those is because it leverages private sector dollars. In order to get those tax credits, you have to put some of your own money in. And if you put your own money in, it's because you believe in the school. And local people who know their schools best, who are willing to put their cash on the barrelhead to support good schools, I would expand those programs, leverage that money, and rely on that local expertise.
Okay. Mr. Mango.
I agree with President Trump. K-12 education is the civil rights issue of our day. I think every one of our children is entitled to a sound K-12 education. But it's fictional to say that there's choice in Pennsylvania. There are tens of thousands of children on the waiting list, particularly in our urban environments, for charter schools. And the reason is the only entity in Pennsylvania that can charter a school is the incumbent existing school district. Is McDonald's going to invite Wendy's in across the street? I don't think so. That's what's happening in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and Harrisburg. That's why people are on the waiting list. We need to expand the choice available to parents. We need to enable that choice with education savings accounts so that when folks want to exercise that choice, they have the financial means to do it, and we need to inform that choice with transparency. We need to let parents know how well or how poorly their educational options are performing.
Thank you. And now Senator Wagner.
The bottom line is the education system in Pennsylvania needs to be retooled and reinvented. Today we have over 200,000 skilled labor positions that are open across Pennsylvania. Good paying positions, many of them starting out at a base of $50,000, some going as high as $150,000, $175,000, maybe with welding skills. The system's not working today, and there has to be choice. And we have to, when I talk about retool and reinvent, that means retool and reinvent the education system. I see it every day because I'm an employer. I employ truck drivers and mechanics. We have an education system today that pushes all children to college. I learned recently that one of the schools in the Allentown School District has a dropout rate of 30 to 35%. In the state of Pennsylvania, it's unacceptable.
Okay. Ms. Ellsworth, any rebuttal?
2 points I would raise, and I may have misheard it. I think pre-K is absolutely critical. We need pre-K for our children. They need to be ready to learn when they get to school. We also need a marker at 3rd grade. Until 3rd grade, you learn to read, and then after, you read to learn. And we have too many people who graduate from 3rd grade and are moved on with an inability to read. And I will tell you that in workforce programs that I worked on, we had 18-year-old graduates of the public schools, and they came to us, and they couldn't read at 3rd grade level. And it is very hard to move people into the workplace if they can't read.
Thank you. Mr. Mango.
I'll tell you what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't support Senator Wagner's bathroom bill that permits anyone to walk into our girls' locker rooms in our K through 12 schools. He had an opportunity to defend our kids' safety and security when Senator Scavello introduced an amendment. And let me read this to you. Nothing in this act may be interpreted to prohibit the limitation of facilities such as restrooms, showers, locker rooms, and dressing rooms to persons based on biological sex. Not only did he vote no, he was the deciding vote that killed that amendment. He is not keeping our kids safe and secure. As I said, he's a dangerous, ineffective, liberal insider, just as Tom Wolf is.
Senator Wagner, any response on school children?
This is the best time to call him Lion Paul. Okay? This bill that I have co-sponsored is about discrimination for housing and employment. And I will not sign a bathroom bill if it comes to my office as governor. Mr. Mango should do his homework. Mr. Mango just dropped out of the air at the beginning of this year. Okay? He doesn't know, and I would like to know, at his former company, McKinsey & Company, did they discriminate? That's what I'd like to know.
I must remind the audience,
I need to respond
hold our applause.
May I respond to that?
Until the end. I want to go back to Jasmine Brooks.
May I respond to that
question from social?
Rob, I need to respond to that.
May I address the issue as well?
It's the end. We have to move on to the next question.
This is why, Rob, this is why the people of Pennsylvania and outsiders like me are disgusted with the inside politicians in Harrisburg. He is telling you, he's on stage saying he would never do anything to compromise the security and safety of our kids in their bathrooms, yet he voted no. He killed the amendment. He was the deciding vote on the amendment that would do just that, protect those kids. That is why I am frustrated with what's going on in Harrisburg. That's why I'm running for governor.
That's why we have a close. Applause. We do have a closing opportunity for all three of you to get into these things. So jot down your notes so you can get back to those things.
And I have a question to ask you from social media. This one comes from a user named Cordy. It's actually a statement, and I would like you to respond to the statement. Here it is. Legalize marijuana for recreational use, tax it, problem solved. And we begin with Mr. Mango.
I don't even know why we're talking about this issue. Okay? We talked just a moment ago about the most significant public health crisis in the history of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. 5,000 Pennsylvanians a year dying. The last thing I would ever consider doing is legalizing a gateway drug that then kids go to heroin and painkillers and everything else. It's ludicrous that we're even talking about it. I will not even consider it if it ever hits my desk.
As someone who employs over 250 truck drivers, absolutely I'm not in favor of legalizing recreational marijuana. I supported medical marijuana because we have to experiment. We have to understand what the benefits are medically. But at the end of the day, marijuana's been around for a long time, and it is in many times a gateway drug because it's not a big deal, and let's try something else, and let's try something else. But absolutely not, I would not support legalizing medical marijuana, or excuse me, recreational marijuana.
And Ms. Ellsworth.
So I've worked very hard with employers and in the workforce system to find jobs for people, inner city kids, for example. And drug tests are one of the biggest barriers to finding workers and to finding work for people who are looking for jobs. I think legalizing marijuana makes that problem worse, not better, and so I wouldn't support it for that reason. I think, too, if you look at the places that have legalized it, Colorado, for example, they are experiencing horrible dropout rates in their high schools. We just talked about this issue. Absentee rates, and the primary cause is marijuana. And so I think it hurts our education system and our workforce system. And I will also note that the last budget, we are now basing our taxes on hoping that more of our citizens drink and gamble and smoke. And I think that's bad enough. I think we need to fix that before we get financially addicted to legalized marijuana.
Okay, and Mr. Mango?
Yeah, let's talk about the budget process. I've said on several occasions, the only way we're ever going to meet our financial needs and obligations is to grow the economy. I keep on saying this. It's time to bring our jobs and our children back home to Pennsylvania. We have a governor in Harrisburg today who is an anti-growth governor. He has created an anti-growth culture in Harrisburg. He believes that every economic opportunity is there for one purpose, to raise revenue for his liberal, progressive, failed programs. I believe it's there to create prosperity for Pennsylvanians. That's the difference between Governor Tom Wolf and me.
Senator Wagner, would you like to rebut?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, and Ms. Ellsworth? Okay.
All right, the next question goes to John Misick.
Okay. I believe this goes to Mr. Mango? Is that correct?
It goes back to Senator Wagner.
Oh, back to Senator Wagner. Senator, sometime within the next 5 or 6 days, the United States Supreme Court will hear an appeal filed by some of your Republican colleagues in the Senate on Pennsylvania's new congressional map. This comes in the midst of petitioning season. Ask you first if you believe the state Supreme Court overstepped its bounds with this decision, one, and then two, if you would support a constitutional amendment taking this process out of the hands of you and your colleagues and putting it into the hands of an independent commission.
Number one, the state Supreme Court overstepped its bounds. When those justices put on their black robes, they are to leave political opinions, affiliations behind. The worst case is David Weck, Justice David Weck. He campaigned and said that if he was elected, that he would throw the maps out. As far as your question on would I support, I'd have to sit down and I'd have to understand all the issues and the complexity. But listen, the maps that are currently in place were put in place by a bipartisan effort. That means that Democrats and Republicans sat down and they worked on the maps together. But this governor has overstepped his bounds, and the state Supreme Court has overstepped their bounds.
Ms. Ellsworth.
We don't need to debate who's overstepped whose bounds. I said before any of this happened that we should have a bipartisan commission that drew those lines. And we didn't really do it bipartisan the way I want to. It should be a bipartisan commission of citizens, not politicians. This ought to be about citizens applying fair standards that apply to everybody, not politicians applying standards that feather their own nest and protect their own districts. And there are places that I work around the world where people today are literally dying for the vote. And we, who are blessed with the vote, have an obligation to one another to make sure that that vote counts for everyone, and a bipartisan commission today is the way to fix the whole debate between the court and the legislature. Do that today, the debate's over.
Mr. Mango.
I disagree. Elections have consequences, and it's very clear in our Constitution that the legislature has the prerogative to do the redistricting. But this is why we need to get a Republican governor and a Republican legislature back to Harrisburg. The consequences, though, go well beyond gerrymandering. We're fighting an ideological battle between a guy who is measuring himself, Tom Wolf, in Harrisburg, by how many more citizens he makes dependent on the government. He's expanded Medicaid. He's eliminated the asset test for food stamps. He has done nothing to fight poverty. My ideology is very different, is to ensure that we're restoring the conditions where everyone can be economically mobile again. Instead of instilling a culture of learned helplessness, let's instill a culture of earned success. So this election coming up has huge consequences well beyond gerrymandering.
Senator Wagner, anything to add or rebut?
This election is about leadership. And Governor Wolf, #1 most liberal governor in the country, is leading us down a bad path. And this is a very, very critical election for Pennsylvania. And it's about leadership. And I'm going to provide the leadership needed in Pennsylvania to get Pennsylvania in the right direction.
Ms. Ellsworth.
Mr. Mango may have misunderstood. It's the legislature that creates the bipartisan commission. That's what I was suggesting the legislature do to exercise its function. The other thing we need to do is really fundamentally structure other aspects of our government too. We should have no budget, no pay. If we don't have a balanced budget on time, neither the legislature nor the governor should get paid until we do. We should have a smaller legislature. We should have a part-time legislature, so they have to live under the rules they pass for the rest of us. Those changes in government and how we do what we're doing is what's called for.
Mr. Mango.
This election is about leadership, and leadership begins with vision. And our current governor has no compelling positive vision for the future of Pennsylvania. Again, that's why we have established the theme, it's time to bring our jobs and our children back home. We want to restore the dream of America to the people of Pennsylvania. Everything follows from that. In my travels, 75,000 miles over the last 15 months, the one thing Pennsylvanians have told me is they want to be inspired again, and our governor is inspiring no one.
Thank you.
I have a question for Ms. Ellsworth. This week we had a bombshell allegation of sexual misconduct against a member of the House. Should that lawmaker resign immediately upon the allegations? And as governor, what would you do to ensure a safe, equal workplace?
So I think I am a due process person. So I am a woman. I want women listened to. I am also the mother of a son. And so I want men listened to. And I read something that said they used to listen to the women, to the men all the time. Now we're going to listen to the women. I suggest we listen to both sides and figure out as best we can what the truth was of the situation. So I think that's what we need to do. The other thing I will say about Harrisburg is I would never ever suggest that you vote for anyone because they are a woman, nor would I suggest you vote for these gentlemen because they're men. But I will tell you this, if you conclude that I am the most qualified and experienced candidate who would do the best job when I get there, the coincidental fact that I am a woman, you put a woman in that governor's chair, all of that will stop.
Mr. Mango.
There should be absolutely zero tolerance for sexual harassment, and there should be absolutely no taxpayer-funded claims settlements for any of our legislators, which has been going on. You know, I have a wife who's a West Point graduate. Talk about breaking through an all-male world. I have 5 daughters, 3 of whom are in the workforce. It would break my heart if any of them had to face the behavior that we've read about recently. I wrote an editorial in the Enquirer about this, and I said 4 things. This all starts with role modeling. Leaders have to role model the behavior they seek in their subordinates. Second, let's create an environment where anyone can come forward if they've been harassed and they feel safe in a risk-free environment to do it. Third, we need to investigate that aggressively and swiftly once that is brought forth. And fourth, if they're found guilty, we need to punish immediately.
Senator Wagner.
We need to have zero tolerance for sexual harassment in Harrisburg. In my company, we've had a sexual harassment policy for over 25 years. We need professional people that respect each other, but we need a zero tolerance policy in Harrisburg and throughout Pennsylvania. We should not be using taxpayer funds to settle, the allegations or put these cases under the carpet. It's a problem today, and it's been here for a long, long time. But at the end of the day, as governor, as I've practiced in my company, we have zero tolerance. We do not tolerate sexual harassment. We also don't tolerate discrimination, and we have bullying in companies happens. We don't tolerate that either. But at the end of the day, we should have zero tolerance, and that's what the taxpayers of Pennsylvania expect.
Ms. Ellsworth.
It's really easy to say that we should have zero tolerance. Of course we should have zero tolerance. But what we're seeing in Harrisburg right now, let me just tell you, is the tip of the iceberg. And what we need is a top-down change. We need a change of tone. And when I started practicing law 35 years ago, when I walked into the courtroom, everybody thought I was the secretary carrying the bags for the lawyers who were there, right? So every woman who is a professional woman, has walked that walk. We understand what that is. And again, put a woman in the chair, case closed.
The light is on. Mr. Mango.
You know, leaders have to create the environment where there is diversity, there's acceptance, and Governor Wolf, who's been there 4 years, has done nothing until all of these allegations came forward to do that. It is the leader's responsibility. I blame him for much of what's happening in Harrisburg because he did not anticipate, he did not act before this came to his attention. Leaders always anticipate and act before their folks are in danger. He failed to do that.
All right, let's turn back to social media and questions that have been given
Yes.
to CBS21's Jasmine Brooks.
This is our final social media question of the day. This is from Danny Snyder. He writes, if property taxes would be abolished, how would that revenue be replaced? And we begin with Mr. Mango.
Yeah. So I've said it and I've written it. I'm for the complete elimination of school property taxes. If SB, Senate Bill 76, hit my desk, which deals with that, I would sign it. We have about 10,000 Pennsylvanians a year being evicted from their homes because they cannot afford property taxes. Most of them are our seniors on fixed income. The whole nature of our real estate tax base is changing. We need to evolve that. We need to modernize it. And yes, we need to replace it with, as the bill says, a combination of income tax and sales tax. We need to move away from school property taxes and modernize our financing of our school systems.
Senator Wagner.
I'm a co-sponsor of Senate Bill 76, and if Senate 76 came to my desk as governor, I would sign that bill. But I can tell you right now in Harrisburg, we do not have a revenue problem. We have a spending and mismanagement problem. We're on our second week of appropriations hearings. It would be my job as governor to find the revenue through managing our state government. We have to look at revenue ideas. I have probably somewhere between $1 and $3 billion worth of revenue ideas that would bring additional revenue in. You're never going to hear me talk about cutting this and cutting that. It's back to managing and measuring. I will tell you that the expenses in Harrisburg are out of control, but it's our job to find that money. But we also have a bigger problem out there. We have school districts that are building $80, $100 million complexes. You know, this is a very complex problem. It is my goal to eliminate school property taxes. I'll find the money to do it.
Okay, and Ms. Ellsworth.
I think that anybody who tells you that they will completely eliminate your property taxes is telling you what you want to hear, not what can really be done and what is really good for the people of Pennsylvania. I agree completely that we cannot leave our seniors at risk of ever escalating property taxes, and that's why I have proposed freezing property taxes for anyone who has paid them for 35 years or more. But if you convert completely to economy-based taxes like sales tax and income tax, when we experience a crash like we did before and those fall off the chart, we can't have our education funding fall off the chart too. We can't have everything fall apart. That's when we need education to train people for what we need to do to restart our economy. So I think we need to be mindful of the seniors. We need to solve for that. But we need to keep some level of property taxes, and it also allows local control of the school districts. If you take that local control away, you take property taxes away, you are going to hand that control right up to Harrisburg, and that is the last thing we need.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Mango, would you like to respond?
Yeah, there's an underlying issue here, which is we pay on average $18,000 per pupil per year in Pennsylvania, and the output we're getting is completely insufficient. I come from Pittsburgh. We spend close to $400,000 for a single high school graduate, many of whom cannot read and many of whom cannot perform math at the 8th grade level. So yes, we need to convert the way we finance our school system, but we need to get to the root causes of the problem, which is we have a failing school system that is very expensive.
Senator Wagner.
Listen, at the end of the day, we're going to find the revenue. But what's burdening the school system right now is this pension crisis. It's off the charts. And part of the crisis is this week we had appropriations hearings. There's a swim coach at the Westchester University that just retired last year. His base salary was $78,000. But in 2015 he earned over $300,000, and the next year $400,000. He retired last year with a salary, or excuse me, a pension payment every month of $115,000 a month, $182,000 a year. There's something wrong.
If you'd like to respond.
The property tax problem is the pension problem. So to reduce the pensions, one of the things that I would do is I would sell the state store system. I would take those proceeds, I would pay down the pension, and by simply doing that, you will make state store products more readily available, you will reduce property taxes, you will shore up the pension and give security to our pensioners who have worked their entire lives in certain expectation of their retirement, and we need to honor that.
Okay, and then Mr. Mango?
I already responded.
Perfect, thank
All right,
you.
we have time for one more question. We're going to limit this answer to 30 seconds this time, and Jan Murphy has it.
Okay, I believe all of you have indicated that you're pro-life. I was wondering, do you believe any changes are needed to the Abortion Control Act, and if so, what?
I am pro-life. I have a 100% pro-life voting record, which has been recognized by the Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation and the Family Institute. I'm also a co-sponsor on Senate Bill 3.
Ms. Ellsworth.
I am also pro-life. I believe that the first 9 months of our lives are spent inside our moms. That is my belief. And so I have also spoken up in favor of Senate Bill 3.
I am pro-life. I've been called the most conservative candidate in this race, and I've been endorsed by the Pro-Life Coalition of Pennsylvania. But you know what? Senator Wagner in the York Dispatch was quoted as saying the Pennsylvania Abortion Control Act was doing its job and he wouldn't change it. I don't think 30,000 babies a year being aborted is doing its job. He is putting our children, our unborn children, in danger. He is affecting their security and their safety. As I said, he is nothing more than a dangerous, ineffective, liberal insider in Harrisburg. I will fight to defend the lives of the unborn in Pennsylvania.
All right, we're not going to do a rebuttal on that question. But we are, candidates, going to take a moment to do what we call a lightning round. We'd like one-word answers to some of these questions, or just a yes or no. The first would be, will you refuse to accept donations from the NRA? Senator Wagner. Yes or no? Or you can now no comment if you want.
No, I'm a member of the NRA, and they do many. Yes, I will accept.
Ms. Ellsworth.
Would I refuse to accept donations from the NRA? Yes, and I believe other campaign reform is important as well.
Mr. Mango.
No.
Should local cops have radar? Ms. Ellsworth. Should local police have radar? Ms. Ellsworth.
Should they have radar?
Radar, speed radar.
Yes.
Mr. Mango.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. What type of beer would you serve at your inauguration? Mr. Mango.
Yingling.
Senator.
Yingling.
And Ms. Ellsworth.
Iron City.
All right. Yes or no, will you take a salary or pension? Senator Wagner.
I will take the salary, and the reason I will take it is because the salary is $185,000 after tax. I will be left with $125,000, and I'll spend between $125,000 and $150,000 on legal fees.
Ms. Ellsworth.
I will take both, but I'll tell you. Can I tell you why?
No salary, no
Yes or
pension
no
for me.
answer.
No salary, no pension.
Here's one, just yes or no. And let's start with Mr. Mango on this one. Will you live in the governor's residence?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All three yes. Will you commit right now to releasing your tax returns and medical records? Ms. Ellsworth.
No.
No.
Mr. Mango.
No.
All right, 3 no's on that. Downsizing the state legislature, good idea, yes or no? Senator?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Mr. Mango.
Yes.
All right, we've got one other. If you drop out of the race, let's start with Ms. Ellsworth. I believe I'm trying to keep the order here. What other candidate would you endorse?
It won't happen.
Okay. Mr. Mango.
The nominee.
Senator?
I will not be dropping out. I'm the Republican Party endorsed candidate.
I thank you all for the short answers on those questions, and I appreciate your sense of humor. We have time to go to John Misick for one more question. This again with a 30-second answer, no rebuttal.
This one's fast. Where are we going?
One more question.
For whom?
Let's begin with Ms. Ellsworth.
Okay, Ms. Ellsworth, should teachers be armed in the classroom? Yes or no, and why not? If not, why not?
I do not believe teachers should be required to be armed in the classroom. I think if you have a teacher who requests permission and they are fully trained and licensed to have a firearm, I think they should be permitted to have one.
Mr. Mango.
I think every school district should develop a security plan that meets the threats and the needs of that local school district. If that includes arming of teachers, that's up to them, not to the state.
Senator.
I agree that teachers should have the ability to carry firearms, with extensive training. But my plan as governor, we will have armed, trained security officers in the schools around the state.
I want to thank all three of you for being so frank and honest with us. And it is time now for the final statements that you'd like to make in this debate. And we will begin with you, Senator Wagner, as we began the debate.
I joined the Senate 4 years ago in 2014 after running a write-in campaign. Some people have said that I'm an insider. Trust me, I'm far from an insider. When I got to Harrisburg, within the first 6 months, I tangled with the Senate Majority Leader. He's no longer there. There was a recent Philadelphia magazine news article where some House and Senate members were being interviewed, and they said many people up here hate his guts because I represent change. We need change, and we need change now. We don't need change, 4 years from now. I can tell you I have the leadership abilities, I have the experience, I understand the issues, and I have the relationships. I can tell you that my 40 years of private sector experience and my 4 years inside the Senate, seeing how things operate, and it's not operating well. But for somebody to call me an insider is, it's actually humorous. Fake news. So it's fake news. So the bottom line is, when I win the race for governor in November, you could hand me the keys. I don't need training wheels on my bicycle. I know exactly what needs to be done. I've been building businesses for over 40 years, employing people. I'm ready, and I'm ready now.
All right. We're still asking you to try to hold your applause until the end. We want to make sure everybody gets all their time. Ms. Ellsworth.
I think what we need is a real outsider, not somebody who has been there for years and has been running for governor for part of the time that he was there and is now the endorsed party candidate. I think we need a true outsider who has experience for more than a decade solving public problems, really solving them, from the private sector, who is an experienced problem solver and somebody who has a track record of getting things done without all of the name calling and shouting and yelling and finger pointing and characterization that gets in the way of smart, intelligent governing. And so I am the only person on this stage that is an outsider who has a decade or more of actual experience solving civic problems, taxes, pension, infrastructure, education in our communities. We know from Governor Wolf, you can't be a business person and just walk in and run government. It's different. We need to bring outsider business discipline, but with somebody who knows how to get it done and isn't walking in cold, because we do not have time for on-the-job training right now in Pennsylvania.
Mr. Mango.
Yeah, America's never been about where we are. It's always been about where we're headed. And I've spoken to thousands of Pennsylvanians over the last 15 months, and they have lost a sense, many of them have lost a sense of where we're headed. They feel a great deal of economic insecurity. They feel a great deal of physical insecurity. They feel an erosion of our core American principles. They wish to be inspired by the dream of America again. They want us to bring our jobs and our children back home. I've led a life that's been inspired by many others. My grandfather left Italy at age 14 by himself to come to America. My parents, who gave me all of the optimism I needed to pursue my dreams. President Ronald Reagan, who just before handing me my degree at West Point said, "Thank you for serving your country. I am going to make you proud of it again." The patriotic soldiers in Ranger School in the 82nd Airborne Division with whom I defended this country. My colleagues at McKinsey & Company, where together we built a $500 million global healthcare business. And my wife of 35 years, who has not only been the mother of my 5 beautiful daughters, but has had a spectacular business career on her own. We understand the obligations that these blessings confer upon us. This election is about leadership. Pennsylvanians are a good and caring people, but they're poorly led. They want to be inspired again, which is the mission of our campaign, to restore the dream of America to the people of Pennsylvania. No one else in this race has the leadership experience or training to do that, and no one else in this race has the plan to do it. I do, I will, and I will lead Pennsylvania back to the glory it once was. I ask for your vote on May 15th. Thank you.
Could not hear you.
We have 30 extra seconds for each of you, but you got to stick to the clock to reply to anything that was said during the debate.
Look, the bottom line is, I've been all over the state for the last 4 years. People want change. They want a governor who is leading, a governor that gives them confidence. Hope is not a strategy. They want someone who's going to make decisive decisions. That we have a lot of great assets and resources and great people in Pennsylvania. But we need someone who's got the backbone and is going to do the right thing and push for change that is needed now.
Ms. Ellsworth.
I agree that Pennsylvanians want change. They want people to listen to them and get things done for them. And the other thing they want is civility. And they want their leaders to be civil, to listen to one another, and to understand that in a democracy, the greatest truth and the way things really get done is when we listen to one another and we focus on the people and getting things done for them, not for us.
Mr. Mango.
Yes, they do want change, but as I said before, the number one thing I learned in talking to thousands of Pennsylvanians over 15 months is they wish to be inspired again. They need a leader who is going to lead through inspiration, not through intimidation. No one else on this stage has had the leadership training and experiences that I've had to do that. And as I said before, no one else has even articulated a plan to do that. I will, and I'll lead Pennsylvania back to the glory it once was.
Senator Scott Wagner, your gubernatorial candidates for the GOP this year. I can tell by the way this debate went, you guys have a race in front of you. I want to thank the audience for being wonderful with us, and I want to thank John Misick, Jan Murphy of PennLive, Patriot News, Jasmine Brooks of CBS 21 News,